It would be relatively easy for many of us to pat ourselves on the back for being demonstrably kind, for suppressing those cruel and violent impulses that rear their heads when we're at our absolute worst, and for dispensing all around kind words and smiles when we're at the top of our game. If we don't make waves at work, occasionally show interest in a friend's personal life, and patiently receive the uninvited slobberings of strange dogs at the local pet park, it's relatively easy to convince ourselves that we are genuinely kind at heart. Those who knew me growing up and since have probably thought me a relatively nice guy. What they haven't seen was that tide of impatience often swelling up within, a tsunami of frustration waiting to break through and flood all the social niceties in a tide of anger. I wish I could say that I was always provoked by social injustice, that my anger always had righteous origins. It would be nice not to recall my exasperation with my family members when they were running late, my indignation with friends who decided to change shared plans at the last minute, and my incredible impatience with teachers who employed, shall we say, poor behavior management strategies in the classroom. And then there was a tendency to interrupt my family of origin in the car whenever I had a great idea, regardless of what anyone else had been saying prior, something earth-shattering that I just needed to get off my chest before I forgot it. And my tendency towards snarkiness when a Sunday morning sermon took too long to get to the point. And personally, I think it would have been far better if the Apostle Paul had launched his famous definition of love with a virtue I'm better at. Maybe I should publish my own version of the Bible in which I reorder these virtues into something a little less challenging. But in all seriousness, the more I think about it, the more it makes sense to begin with patience, followed by kindness. The wisdom in this particular arrangement of the virtues was not obvious to me initially. At first, it seemed, frankly, too passive. For me, the pairing of patience and kindness conjures visions of soft-spoken, long-suffering folk who face stressful situations with grace and a cheerful smile. Of course, Jesus goes a step further, requiring his followers to respond lovingly to injustice perpetrated against themselves, to turn the other cheek and love even their enemies. Is the ideal human being supposed to round off all their edges and corners, to ignore their own pain, and to pluck off all the cold pricklies we've naturally developed to keep bullies at arm's length? What about self-preservation? In The Prince, Italian philosopher Niccolo Machiavelli argues that a truly Christian nation could never survive, that responding to aggression with patient kindness would swiftly lead to invasion and defeat. Is the same principle applicable to romantic relationships? Are patience and kindness a recipe for getting walked on? Surely, the goal is not a kind of self-induced paralysis in which we shut down our brains in order to stop responding to hostile words and hateful actions. No lover should allow themselves to become a punching bag which quietly receives injury and then bounces back into position waiting for the next swing, or a beanbag that is waiting to be sat on. The Apostle John calls believers to love in action and in truth, advice that seems to suggest love should always be active. How is patience active? When considering how to be patient, it is tempting to embrace a path of least resistance, to consider inattention or apathy as practical routes to that virtue. If I think about something else instead, or better yet, stop caring quite so much about something that would otherwise make me impatient, it's far easier to breathe easily. I'd like to suggest that such a reaction to stressful situations is an unhealthy relational trap, and that it's not really patience. The kind of patience the Bible recommends appears to involve simultaneously both a trusting act of release and a determined act of will. Though patience is rarely easy, it's more probable when we trust that God has our back, that His provision will carry us through whatever challenges we're facing in our life and relationships. We can trust that things will work themselves out and be patient with however long the process takes, if we truly believe that God is sovereign over everything. When we manage to believe this, even our own suffering, hardship, and loss can be seen as part of a larger design. In this state of mind, we can patiently let go and take hold, but not with a despairing, desperate grip. To be truly patient with another person, it helps if one knows them, and deep knowledge requires intentionality. As one of the writers of Proverbs observes, the person who exercises patience has great understanding. If I don't watch closely and listen to my partner so that I can identify patterns in their behavior, I'm much more likely to be frustrated again and again by what I've not learned to anticipate and accept. Acceptance of our partner's differences is an important part of all of this, a topic I'll return to in week 4. At present, suffice it to say that we need to pray for discernment, for the ability to distinguish among all the things our beloved does that could potentially irritate us, and decide which ones to just accept as quirks we don't share but can live with, and even learn to appreciate. Just because something isn't our personal preference doesn't make it a sin. If we are careful observers and listen attentively, we're also much more likely to practice effective kindness, to ensure that what we intend as kindness is actually received as such. Take love languages, for instance, relational needs which I believe change over time and thus require our continued close attention. If I don't know my wife well enough to know whether these days she prefers physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, or gifts, how on earth am I supposed to express kindness to her in a way that is not perceived as a selfish demand on my part? If what she wants is physical touch, what kinds of touch throughout the day does she prefer? If quality time, what can I come up with to do that she's going to enjoy at least as much, if not more, than I will? What words of affirmation will roll off her as meaningless, and which words will actually have a tangible, meaningful impact? In the famous science fiction classic Ender's Game, author Orson Scott Card suggests that such profound knowledge of someone else makes it far easier to love them, at the same time that it gives us the power to destroy them. If we know what they need, then we also know their weaknesses. I pray that we use that power and influence to lift up and affirm our loved one, not to manipulate and injure them, or, as happens in lots of American films these days, drive our loved one to the brink of mental illness.